All right. Welcome, everybody. Phil Simborg for the USBGF. And today I'm very pleased to have a guest lecturer with me, Rich Munitz. And Rich, for those of you who don't know, has been a giant for quite a while. I think the last 3 or 4 votings, he's been voted one of the top 32 players in the world, which is pretty amazing for a guy who, unlike many of the giants, has a full-time job and a family and works and leads a normal life. He's just not just a backgammon freak. And I also really appreciate Rich's being a member of the board of directors of the USBGF since its inception. And he's given a lot of time and effort to the USBGF. And he's donating his time today to talk to us about a very interesting checker play position. So with that, I will turn it over to Rich. Rich?
Hi there, everybody. Rich Munitz here. The position I'm going to be discussing today is a early game position. It's a little bit contrived, but the goal here is to teach something and discuss a few concepts, and it's sufficient for that. The way we're going to be doing this is I'll be showing you a position. You should stop at that point and kind of think how you would play the position yourself, and feel free to pause the video in order to have the time to do that, and then we'll show the analysis results on extreme gammon and discuss a little bit about what the results show us. So this position here is you have a 4-1 to play, and you can see that not much development has taken place in this game, but there are a few things to note here. One being that White has managed to get himself a 3rd checker sent back, and the other is that obviously you can see Brown has made his 5 point, has made an advanced anchor, and crucially has managed to go up 33 pips in the race. So question is, how would you play the 4-1 here? So, think about that a little.
Let me add real quick, just to set the stage. If you can't see it, well, the score is 0-0 to 11, or 11 away, 11 away. So we're talking what we call a normal match score, where your take points are around 21.5 and your gammon values are about 0.5. This may be analyzed very, very differently at different scores. So let's look at this. This is pretty much like a money game.
Right. That's a good point, Phil. Thanks for mentioning that. Yeah, the goal here is not to be confused by, match considerations, really, but to focus really on, the checker play issues. And, this order will apply for money and really most match scores, other than strange lopsided positions. So you probably are looking here, at various things like coming down to the 8 point, or splitting your back checkers and maybe coming to the 2 point. There's various safe plays, and then there are various risky plays that you could consider. So one of the things you're often considering when you're dealing with checker play positions in early game is you're looking at the bold versus safe play criteria, that were brought to first really elucidated by Paul McGreal, and we look at things like what's the race, who's behind, who's got more checkers back, who's got a stronger home board, things of that nature, who's got an advanced anchor. And what you can see here is that, well, certainly as far as the race is concerned, White is getting crushed right now. So that would make him a little bit more willing to take some risk. But White does not have an advanced anchor. White does have that 3rd checker back. And in fact, Brown has the advanced anchor here. White also doesn't have the stronger home board. So, if you're just counting the number of criteria here, that might lead you to suspect that, well, gee, the conditions don't really favor a bold play. But the race here is so lopsided and that third checker back is such a big deal that it actually does indeed call for a bold position here. White is not going to improve this position by simply playing passively. He's got to take some chances, and this being the early game seems to be the right time to do that. So let's take a look at the analysis results here. And here we go. And you can see that the best play here is to split the back checkers and bring a builder down from the midpoint. So you've got a stacked midpoint with a lot of checkers there looking to go somewhere. And you've got a stacked 24-point with those checkers looking to get into motion as well. So this kind of is the best of both worlds. What's interesting here is how far behind the kind of the normal plays you might consider without considering, that you should be making a bold play, right? The 13-8 play, which seems like, okay, well, it's a lousy roll. Let's just wait for something better next time. Okay, just bringing a guy down to the midpoint, to the 8-point, is actually a fairly big blunder here.
What really surprised me was how close the second play is. That's
right.
A play that I would have thought that I ruled out almost immediately.
That's right, and this is really very instructional here about how much this kind of position calls for some boldness and some risk-taking. Look at this play, right? You're double slotting, into a double shot. And the goal of this kind of play, and it's really about the analysis comes out as 0.019 behind the top play, and that's pretty close. You're not making a big error by making this play, and this is a great example of how much risk you can take to try and improve this position. Bringing down two guys puts those guys where they belong, is threatening to greatly improve the position if it works out. And if it doesn't, well, you had a lousy position to begin with, so, it's a loss. You'd rather not get hit, but it's not the end of the world compared to where you were to begin with.
So what Extreme Gammon and Rich Munitz are telling me is that even though you have what's clearly an inferior position, you're still fighting to try and figure out a way to win the game.
That's right. And here, desperate times call forth desperate measures, so to speak. And, just hoping for something better to come later might not be the best way to win this game. Maybe you got to make it happen as opposed to waiting for it to happen.
Yeah. Now, take a notice that if you look at the win percentages, this play of slotting 2 points is the right play at DMP, at double match point. If gammons don't matter at all, this play is going to win you the most because, number one, if you don't get hit, you've got a lot of things you can really do, and you're not always going to get hit. And if you do get hit, you still stand a very good chance of making your 5-point on the next roll or hitting him back or making your 9-point on the next roll, or even if you get hit, making a good anchor on the other side. So if you don't care about gammons, or if you're at a score where gammons don't matter much, you can really play bold in a play like this. That's
right, and you can see the reason this play doesn't come out on top is if you look over here, it gets gammoned a couple of percent more than the play that comes out on top. So it's the gammon losses that are making this play not as strong. But if you don't care about those gammon losses, then you do pretty well by just going for it.
Rich, what about cube considerations? I'm scared about getting the cube here, no matter what I do. Does that enter into your thinking on your choice of plays here?
Well, of course it has to, and that's going to kind of make some people gun shy. But clearly, you can see that it's going to be a take no matter what you do. And under those circumstances, you want to just pick the right play.
Looks like it's going to be a double no matter what you do too, doesn't it?
That very well could be the case. It's definitely up there, and there's a lot that can if you're brown looking at that position, there's a lot that can go right and lead to a pass next turn. So you probably want to be looking at cubing here. But by the same token, if you're going to be gun shy because you're afraid of the cube, well, look, you can see what happens when you make the safe play, right? And say, oh, gee, well, let's not, provoke the cube. Well, you're probably provoking it even more because now you're in such an inferior position with no prospects of improvement that you're a lot closer to a pass. Look at this. It's almost -1 for you. It's just a little bit short of that. So you're not going to win. You're not going to escape the inevitable by playing passively here and hoping to delay what's coming anyway.
Yeah, there's a human factor here, too, that I think it may not directly apply in this particular position, but it applies in a lot of positions. When you're afraid of being doubled, when you make the bold play, when you make a play that gives you a chance, if things go right, to have a pretty good game, that might scare your opponent from having the cube. Remember, we're not always playing against extreme gammon. When you're playing humans, when you make the right play here, I can suddenly see a chance for white to do something good, and that might scare me from doubling or make it harder for me to double, as opposed to the very, very safe play where I think, well, if things go wrong for me, what's white going to do? He doesn't have much of a game no matter what.
That's right. Certainly this position works well because you've actually put one of your back checkers onto the 23-point, and now if you get hit, you've got additional prospects of either making the 23-point, or you've got other ways to make advanced anchors there that you might not have had otherwise. So this works better defensively, and of course there's less chance of getting hit as well. So really this play is accomplishing two good things. It's bringing down a checker and trying to improve the position by bringing additional builders into the outfield, and it's splitting off of that 24-point that's overly stacked, and particularly you can see there's something not a big prime starting to form, but certainly Brown's position here can improve. So you're splitting early when you might need that flexibility. So let's take a look at the next position. What we're going to do here is we're going to change a few things and see how that changes the result. One of the things here is that white has a very, very undeveloped position. And part of his willingness to be bold is because that position is so undeveloped and he needs to do something in order to improve it. So let's see what happens when we give white a few more prospects here, a little bit better position, and see what that does. So take a look at what we've done. We've moved a checker from the 8-point back to the 10-point, and we've moved one down from the midpoint down to the 10-point. Overall, the pip count, 32 pips behind for white. The pip count hasn't really changed, and but now white is starting to have a somewhat better position. Right, he's got more blocking potential. He's got more landing spots. He perhaps can. He perhaps doesn't have to take as many risks here because he's got other ways to win this game. You'll also notice, and you might want to think about what you would do here before we continue.
And again, you can stop the tape and think about it and then continue the tape if you'd like.
Right. But one of the things you'll notice is that the 8-point is now stripped, right? And the midpoint has still a stack of checkers. So it's a reasonably natural play to come down to the 8-point. And, whereas before you already had checkers there and, had a spare, and it maybe wasn't as strong a consideration. But let's take a look at what the analysis shows us here. And it shows us that Extreme Gammon still wants to make the same play that we did last time. And, you have to start asking yourself, what is this play really accomplishing? Is that checker on the on the 9-point really, is that aggression, that boldness really as called for here? Is that checker on the 9-point really doing a much bigger job than it would be if it was simply sitting on the 8-point? I don't really know that it is. So what's going on here? Well, as I see it here, the big factor, surely if you get away with it, the checker on the 9-point, will be good on the 9-point. But the big thing it does is it splits those back checkers and gets them all working together. You now have checkers on 2 different points, and you've got more ways to develop your position. You're also starting to create more ways to get one of those checkers out if you need to. So splitting the back checkers is a big consideration, and one that makes combines with the benefits of the checker on the 9-point to make this the top play. You can see that the double slot is still kind of up there, but it's weakened a little bit, and that's just because you've got a stronger and a somewhat less desperate position. So there's not as much of a need for such caution to the wind play as there was last time. But nevertheless,
so we are seeing a little bit of a theme here, which is in line with what I have posted recently on USBGF Facebook page as a hint that, and I think it was from Roberti's book, that says when you have stacked points, unstacking should be a major consideration in all of your checker plays. And that's been a theme in both of these plays so far. Unstacking the midpoint and unstacking those 3 checkers back on the 24 to give you a more robust game, to give you more flexibility. Seems to be, and this play you're showing right now, we're unstacking the 6-point, which is another stacked point.
That's right. It's just not as strong as it was before because the position has other ways to be won. So really, this is the way to go, unstacking that 24-point, and hopefully that checker on the 9-point does some good as well. But key here is that the race is still just as lopsided as it was before. So the idea of some boldness here is still just as valid as it was before. Perhaps you're not as desperate, but nevertheless you're 32 pips behind in the race. So you're still kind of in a bad position if you don't do something to improve.
So when you're 32 pips behind in the race, you can say to yourself that racing is not my game plan. I either have to play a priming game or a hitting game, so make a play that leads to one of those 2 types of games. This is probably going to be a good priming game if you don't get hit off the 9-point, and you have a decent hitting game where you'll get into a back game or a good holding game if you do get hit. So right. It's screaming, it's all about game plan again.
That's right. You have to say, okay, how do I win this game? And let's find a way to do that, right? If you simply rest on the position and don't do anything, you're probably going to lose anyway. So don't try to take a losing position and find ways to lose less badly. That doesn't help you, right? Find ways to win. And that involves, looking at game plans.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people have a natural tendency when they're behind the 8 ball or they're losing, and you have to feel like you're losing in positions like this. Their fear of getting gammon is usually too great because they forget that gammons are only worth half as much as when you're losing the game at these scores. You still should be trying, where Stick says, make the DMP play if you're not sure. And in this case, you're pretty much making more like the DMP plays in most of these cases.
Right. So let's now take a look at another position, right? We've been talking about how the race is such a motivating factor in taking risk and in trying to improve your position, and that you're just willing to make bold plays like this because of the race. And the fact that, you're just not going to have race as a game plan. Well, let's see what happens when we take this position and move the checkers around to equalize the race or close to it. Let's take a look at this position. I've taken some of those spares and I've moved them way back. Now Brown has 4 checkers stacked up on the 21 point. He's got some spares that were taken from his side of the board and moved all the way around to the back. You can see the race now. White is down by 4 pips, but this means that after he makes his play, he's actually going to be up by a pip. And so now, what does this do to your situation? Does this change the calculus? And now you pretty much no longer have any of the bold versus safe criteria going for you. You've got fewer checkers back. You're behind. You're essentially even in the race. You've got a weaker home board. You don't have an advanced anchor. So, right, you should kind of want to play safely here, shouldn't you? What do you think? Take a look.
I think you're trying to trick me because I know you too well. I'm suspicious. There's always that quiz factor that makes me suspicious when someone like you shows me a play and leads me towards playing safe. Now I know I shouldn't play safe, but only for that reason.
Right. Well, your instincts are correct. It helps, of course, that I know the answer here. But let's take a look. And here we can see, amazingly, that it's still right to split that back checker and to bring down a builder from the midpoint. So what's going on here, right? I mean, you no longer have any of the traditional criteria for making a bold play. It just seems completely natural here to unstack the midpoint, bring them to the 8 point, not get sent back in the race by 16 pips if you get hit on the 9 point, and what's going on.
Not only does it seem natural, but that was my play. I have to admit, I played 13-8 here, and I would bet that 90% of open players would get this wrong. So I'd love to know what's going on. Explain it to me.
Well, what's going on is, and this is sort of where a lot of this, discussion to this point is going. Those 3 checkers back on the 24 point are so bad and so need to be put into motion that you are willing to take what seems like a large risk. Now, you can see here that moving up into second place here is, and this sort of drives the point home, right? The last thing you want to do when you got 4 checkers stacked up on your 4 point of your opponents is to start dropping guys behind, right? You kind of want to keep your checkers in action and try and prime those guys or whatever. But you can see here that it's so important to split off the 24 point that it's second best to simply drop a guy onto the 2 point. It's that important. And this is a situation I have seen come up over and over and over in play, is that when you wind up with a situation where you're trying to decide between 3 guys, and this is typically early game positions where you're not, primed, you're not, facing 10 checkers in the zone to attack you. In early game positions, when you've got a decision to make between having 3 checkers on your ace point or not having 3 checkers on your opponent's ace point, it is almost imperative that you unstack that point. And this comes up over and over and over again. And this is an important concept, that those 3 checkers there, when you see that, you should get, your stomach should start churning. It is something to be avoided. And you can see here the kinds of risks that you should be willing to take to avoid that situation. Three checkers on the ace point. They're only escaping with sixes. They really can't work well together to make advanced anchors. They don't cover the outfield in case your opponent wants to bring builders down. They just plain are handcuffed. And this final position here, where we basically evened up the race, shows you how critical it is to unstack that point.
All right, I want you to do one thing for me to prove your point, and I bet you it does prove your point. Move a checker from white, from the 24 point of white to the 13 point, and I'll bet you then you're proving the point. Yeah, move one checker from there to the there, and I'll bet you play 13-8 here. Not just because you're up in the race, but because you don't have the three checkers back. Let's do it.
Let's see what happens.
Yeah. I'll bet this proves the point. With two checkers back, you don't need to split as much. And the big thing that Rich has been saying all along, there it is. And you don't split with back checkers. And
it's clear. You can see that this play is well behind now of 13-8. And yes, there's less urgency. Those two back checkers, there's kind of less of an issue of them being split. They're still serving the purpose of being an anchor, so to speak. Whereas before, if you split the third checker off, you maintain your anchor. Even if you're attacked, you still have an anchor. And that's a big consideration as well.
Okay, so what you've proven with all three of your test positions, that we found out that the key was the three checkers on the 24 that you need to get moving, not so much whether or not you need to slot the 9 point or need to go behind. That seemed to be the driving force in all these plays, regardless of the race and regardless of whether or not you had a better board on your side or not. It's a major lesson, and it's a lesson that I would not have learned if you hadn't given this lesson. I've only been playing for about 55 years, and I've always known that it's bad to have three checkers on the 24, but I would have missed at least one or two of the plays until you did this lesson. So it really drove it home. But a bigger lesson I think that you drove home, Rich, is the need to not just look at a position and say, oh, I was wrong, I should have done this. You need to make variations of the position. You need to switch it around. You need to change where the checkers are so that you start really learning why something is occurring. Because you'll remember why. You'll remember the lesson why. You're not going to remember each individual position. It's too hard. There's too many positions.
That's exactly right. For me, because I don't have an encyclopedic memory, the way people often ask, well, how did you get so good? And the way that I developed my game was to look at positions and try and find the underlying concepts that lead to the correct play. And when you come up with theories about what may be the correct concept, you have to test those theories. You have to be scientific. And so you start playing around with the position. You start moving the checkers around and try to isolate each concept that you're thinking about. And some may prove to be invalid as you play with the position, and others may be reinforced. And eventually you come up with your concepts and your mental frameworks that you can use when you have a different position, because you're not going to face the same position over the board in the future. You're going to face something that's different, and you want to have the ability to reinforce those concepts and know which ones to apply in which situations. So then you can play an infinite number of positions without having to have every one of them in your memory. And that's been important for me, and it's made me successful in this game, and it's something everybody can do. But you have to ask yourself, not just, okay, this is what the computer would have done, I should try to remember that, but why? Why is this correct and the other play isn't correct? What's driving it? And we've seen a good example of that here.
Fantastic example. Rich, thank you very, very much, and I hope you will donate more of your time to the USBGF and do more analyses like these. We've had great response to these videos, thanks to you and Stick and Perry and O'Hagan and Sachs and Coca and Mary Hickey. I've had a lot of really great giants like yourself doing these positions, and I want to use this opportunity to thank all of you for your time and for everyone who's supporting USBGF by joining, and that's the only way you're going to see these videos. You're learning things that non-members of the USBGF will never know. So hopefully that's going to help your game. Rich, thank you, and well, good luck in New York coming up. I'm sure you're going to be playing there next week.
I will.
And good luck next year as well. Happy New Year.
Thanks. You too.
Thank you.